This meeting is being recorded.
Welcome to another episode of the Less is More Sports podcast. As Matt and I recap the NBA draft, I just want to take this opportunity to say that the Orlando Magic have won the draft by drafting the best player, Paolo Banchero. The end. We can go home.
Okay, bye.
So obviously, how was that for a much better intro than last week?
Well, I liked last week's better.
Really?
There was no blatant homerism in last week's intro, just honest journalism.
There was no journalism in last week's intro. It was me having technical difficulties and looking like a moron.
Still, that's better than blatant homerism.
I guess we're going to have to agree to disagree on that one. But taking it from blatant homerism, I want to start by saying that, yes, we are talking about the 2022 NBA draft this year. And I was looking at it. I was on Twitter, and I was looking at a tweet from Gary Davis, whose Twitter handle is DynastyU. Matt probably sees us going back and forth on Twitter from time to time. He was a former co-host on the Weekend Sports Buzz on 96.1 radio when I was interning there. And, he's a Kentucky homer in the same way that I'm a Duke homer in a lot of ways. And he said, and one of his tweets said, "Can somebody please draft Ty Washington so I can turn this boring draft off?" And I wanted to joke around with him and talk about how, he only thinks it's boring because only one Kentucky player got drafted. I believe only one Kentucky player got drafted. But in all honesty, do what?
Technically two.
Who's the other?
Jayden Sharp.
Oh, but okay. So Kentucky fans love to say that Duke fans can't claim Kyrie Irving, but they'll turn around and claim Jayden Sharp and Enes Kanter, guys that played no minutes for Kentucky at all. But Kyrie, a guy who played 11 games for Duke, we can't claim. So I never did understand that logic, but But in a lot of ways, he was right because there weren't a lot of big storylines with this draft. Last year, we had an NBA draft record 13 trades. This year, we had 8. And not only that do we have fewer trades, but we didn't see a lot of big-name pieces move. I think the biggest storyline that we had post-draft was the top 3 players that were expected to go off the board first. They went off the board, but there was a little bit of a shakeup of what order they went. And I think that was the biggest post-draft story. Matt, what were your overall thoughts and what was your oversimplification thoughts of the NBA draft?
I mean, it's just what you said. It was just kind of, and we've grown used to this as the years have drawn on with like rumors of super teams and rumors of trades and yada yada. But it's just pedestrian, It was a very pedestrian draft. Everything almost went exactly as you would think. And it's even weirder when you think about like how there were 8 trades, and I think 4 of them involved Jalen Duran. So he was about 50% of the transactions in that draft to begin with. So, I mean, the real intrigue that was hanging over the draft, once again, came from the threat of another super team because we got the Kyrie Irving dissatisfaction news. We got the Kevin Durant dissatisfaction news. There was a lot of that going on. But other than that, it was a very pedestrian affair. The most talked about thing I saw on Twitter was the fact they changed the pick is in jingle to the State Farm is there jingle because reasons, which really did catch me off guard, I do have to admit. But that was really the most interesting thing I saw on Twitter. Was just that people like, man, I can't believe they changed the pick is in to State Farm is there, and now it's gone too far, and yes, this stuff. And I'm like, well, there are players being picked, but and I'm going to talk about this a little bit later. The one thing I did notice a lot, but even more.
This meeting is being recorded.
But the most interesting thing to me too, as well, and I'll talk about this a little bit later when we get into some of the winners and losers, was that this draft, above all the other drafts, proved to me that like now the NBA draft is a crapshoot that's based on potential. you're drafting now the most freakish athletes you can find rather than like guys who were good in college. And well, I'll explain more of that later. But that's what it looked like to me. It was a pedestrian draft. It was about what we expected, and just how the format of drafting players has changed really stood out to me. But like I said, I'll explain that when we get to winners and losers. That's all I have.
Well, anyways, I think the biggest story of the NBA draft came before the draft, and it was by the number 2 overall pick, Chet Holmgren, who was drafted by the Thunder. But that wasn't the story. The story came is more of not of so much of what he did do, but something he didn't. And according to reports, he has not provided a medical report for most teams, including the Magic and Thunder, who held the top 2 picks. And he did not participate in the heart screening at the NBA Combine. Matt, what do you think about this?
It's definitely weird, and I mean, I can understand that being a red flag for someone, but it's just weird, you know. It's especially in the way we have medical health now. You don't that's not going to be, if it's not super serious, as big of an issue as it used to be. So that was kind of surprising to me that someone wouldn't do that unless there's something else at play. But obviously, it didn't affect his stock that much. Going number 2 overall is still pretty damn good. It's just a very odd situation to me, you know. But I would like to know what teams he did give those records to, because it didn't say that he didn't give them to every team. He just didn't give them to the ones who were near the top of the draft. I don't know if that's some clandestine way to plan a John Elway situation, or because let's be honest here, the Thunder have a crap ton of draft picks, but they're not going to be going anywhere for another year or two. And the Magic is the Magic. They've lost the Magic. So I don't really know. The whole thing just kind of caught me as like being a weird situation in general. Like, is this a ploy? Is this hiding a serious health issue? And if so, why would you hide a serious health issue in today's draft where player safety and the care that goes into that? There's a coach for everything, every part of your body. Why would you hide that? Especially since it's clearly not affecting your ability to play at a high level, especially after seeing what he did to Gonzaga.
But yeah, I agree. Actually, you touched on one of the issues that I thought it was, and my thoughts on it is hopefully there is no health issue with Chet,
Yeah.
and especially giving the timing of the passing of Caleb Swanigan, RIP. There's obviously a concern anytime, especially when you don't go through the heart screening that the NBA Combine offers. And like you said, there's a type of coach or expert for any type of your body. So if there is an issue, that should give you all the reason to feel comfortable to saying, hey, I do have this issue. How can we work around it? How can I still play in the league, reach my goals while getting this treated? But to me, I think you touched on it perfectly. I thought this was a ploy to maybe control his own destiny, go where he wanted to go. But like you said, I mean, the Magic, they've lost the Magic, and then the Thunder, they have so many draft picks, they don't know which direction they're going to go. But, the Thunder weren't buying it. They ended up drafting him. And the Magic, as much as they've lost their Magic, they have not lost their Magic on selecting the right number 1 overall pick. Every time they've gotten a number 1 overall pick, that player's turned out to be pretty good.
You got a point there. You do have a point there, yes. And I don't know if Banchero is going to be as impactful as Penny Hardaway or Dwight Howard or Shaquille O'Neal right off the bat, but he is a solid player, and it's a good pick to me, even though they have a lot of forward type guys on the roster. Now you have some flexibility with that. You can trade a couple guys if you need to, get pieces where you want them, and I mean, every NBA summer promises insane free agency, and sometimes it delivers, and sometimes it doesn't. It just is going to depend on what the landscape of the league looks after we get through like this Irving situation, all that stuff. So I think he'll be a fine pick. The question always is though, with like organizations at the top of the NBA draft especially, who's going to be the team that actually figures it out and gets out of there, because it feels like we don't have many of those as we do in football, where there's like a Bengals every year that turns the franchise completely around. It feels like the Magic, the Rock. Well, the Rockets not really, but it feels like they've been there forever. It feels like the bottom feeders of the NBA generally stay there a little bit longer than the bottom feeders in other leagues. So
But as for the top three players, we knew that it was going to be Paolo Banchero, Chet Holmgren, and Jabari Smith who came off the board first. As mentioned earlier, we just didn't know which order they were going to come off of the board. And given that the Banchero went number 1 to the Magic, Holmgren went number 2 to the Thunder, and Smith went number 3 to the Rockets. Matt, how much do you think each team drafted based on this is the guy that they believe was the best player available? And how much do you think they drafted because look, there's not really a huge gap between these three guys, but this guy fits my team better.
I think it's more so the second one, especially. And I think there's also a lot of at that point in the NBA draft, now like we've talked about how the league's changed multiple times to the point where it's kind of become a meme on this show and how Golden State's changed everything to positionless basketball. And I think that's true. Any one of these top three guys is just one of those dudes who, even though they're big, they can go out and pop a shot, they can go out and rebound. I think now, especially with those top three guys, you're drafting on fit, yes, but you're also drafting on the fact that this person is a freak athlete. And in a league of positionless basketball players, you just need freak athletes if you're going to succeed. And say what you will about the muscular physique of Holmgren, he still plays that positionless basketball very well, even for a center. We've seen him shoot outside, we've seen him shoot inside. I mean, do I even have to remind everyone of Jabari Smith's amazing dunk in that NCAA tournament game? I mean, we know he's a freak. We know Banchero is a freak. So, I mean, when you're picking that high in the draft, even the Pacers, they picked Benedict Matheran out of Arizona, another kind of hybrid guard forward type guy who could just go out there and slam a basketball doing a 360 with a hand tied behind his back. When you're drafting early in the NBA draft, you have a chance to get a very unique athlete, especially in today's day and age, who's played every position of basketball because they've been doing it since they were in seventh grade. They've been playing basketball. They've been getting coached by people, even if their height changes, even if their skill set changes. It's not like the NFL where you have to draft a quarterback or you have to draft a defensive lineman. In the NBA, you're drafting a guy. You are drafting a guy who you want to turn your franchise around with. And it doesn't matter if you already have 3-point guards. It doesn't matter if you already have 4 centers. If you have a chance to get the guy who can be like the next Steph Curry, who can be like the next LeBron James, who can just go out there and do anything you need because he's a mountain of man who cannot be stopped. That's what you do to me. That's what you do if you're a GM. And especially in today's day and age where these guys are in the best physical shape, they've got the best coaches, they've probably got some of the craziest technology of all time, making their game even better. That's who you go out and get.
I'm going to agree and disagree at the same time with that statement because, yes, you're absolutely right about your description of all three players. They're all three fantastic talents and, are generational talents. Wow, I can't believe I just said talents twice there. What a word vomit. But anyways, I feel like even though, yes, most teams do draft based on fit, a combination of fit and talent, I think each team did it differently. I think the Magic went for who they thought was the best guy available. And you know what, Magic? I would agree. Paolo Banchero was the best player in the draft. I agree with that. I was low-key waiting for Matt to call me a homer on that statement, but
I'm just gonna look at my hands and just act like I'm continue.
Anyways, but yes. And then I feel like the Thunder went with which one of those three guys was the best fit. I feel like they needed a center, a guy that they could rely on. I'm not really sold on the nickname, the Thin Towers, between him and the other guy. I don't feel like that's going to intimidate anybody. But
no.
I don't think anybody's going to be striking fear with the Thin Towers. But no, I think Holmgren was a position of need for them and a versatile one at that. And then with the Rockets, they were kind of like, well, hey, you pick Banchero and Holmgren, might as well go with Jabari Smith. So I think it just happened to work out because I think Jabari Smith next to a Jalen Green or, or a Josh Christopher or Kevin Porter, especially that they lost a big in Christian Wood to the Mavericks, and now they have like a stretch four that can pretty much handle a rock, shoot the ball from anywhere on the court. I think it kind of just worked out in their favor that the best player available was a perfect fit for that roster as well. So I think so long story short, I think originally the Thunder were the only team that went for fit, and then I think the other two went for the best guy available.
And I mean, another thing too with all three of those teams, really, and I may be overrating him slightly, but they all have like a guy at the guard level who can play off the uh, draft picks very well, whether it be Jalen Suggs. Oh crap, my brain has left the building about who that guy for the Rockets is. The one who everyone thought could win Rookie of the Year.
Jalen Green,
and Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, of course, probably the best one of the three at that level in Oklahoma City. They've all got like a 1-2 punch type thing going. The difference being Oklahoma City has a couple more interesting pieces to me, but like I said, they're still very young. They're a year away from contending, but that's another thing too. They all three of those teams had like a guy they could dish the ball to, someone they could dish it to on like pick and rolls,
right?
Kick it out to for three. So I think that had to do with it too. Those three teams already had a solid guy at the 1-2 position. So
no, I think that's a good point. I think both teams, feel like they had their guards of the future, and they needed to kind of get their forwards of the future to build a complete starting lineup. So I like where you went there. So, but as we mentioned earlier, it wasn't as much flair, pizzazz with this draft as there have been in years past. Of course, I watched the rest of it or till about the 35th pick just to see who the Lakers are going to pick, and then I had to go to sleep, go to work. But of course, I wanted to see where my Duke guys went, and of course, Paulo went 1. Mark went to the Hornets. AJ went 18 to the Hawks. And then Wendell went to the Timberwolves. Thought was a pretty good move as well. Wasn't awake to see Trevor Keels go to the Knicks, but, congratulations to him. But, of course, as much as I wanted to see my Duke guys get drafted, I wanted to see who my Miami Heat drafted. And I think the draft pick of Nikola Jovic, not to be confused with Nikola Jokic, I think is a perfect fit. Perfect stretch 4 option to play next to Bam. And he's a 6'10" guy, can handle and can absolutely shoot the lights out. I saw one of his pro comps the other day, and it was Danilo Gallinari, which is ironically enough, I remember when Gallinari was entering free agency, and that was one of the guys I felt like, that's going to be a perfect fit next to us. He ended up going to Atlanta, but now a couple years later, we got that perfect Gallinari fit in this draft. So I was very pleased with my team's drafting, and now as we just await a free agency to see what other superstar they're going to bring in, whether that be a Donovan Mitchell or a Bradley Beal or whatever. But even if they aren't able to land a superstar, I still like this pick, and I think that Jovic could be a very valuable piece for us in the future. But that being said, after watching the draft again, Matt, if you had to pick one winner and one loser, who would you say?
I'm actually going to go on a limb here, kind of, for my winner, because I'm going to say, in spite of the fact the message boards that I've read on are torn about this, I'm going to say the winner to me the first winner that comes to mind automatically are the Detroit Pistons. I think that Jaden Ivey's a good pick. He's going to fit in well with Cunningham already, and I really like the fact they've acquired Jalen Duran out of Memphis after he was traded the 9th time that night. I'm just glad that he's there. He's a very athletic big. And the other thing is, even if he doesn't stay, that being Jalen Duran, they're going to probably move him as part of a package to get DeAndre Ayton. So the Pistons have set themselves up in a very good position to at least try to make that East play-in tournament if Cade Cunningham continues on the development path. I've watched Jalen Ivey play so many times that I'm absolutely convinced he's going to be a very good player. And whether or not they keep Jalen Duran or swap him for DeAndre Ayton, they're going to get better in the middle. I think the Pistons have done quite a good draft to position themselves to at least contend for that play-in tournament. And of course, my loser, as always, because reasons, and they're just kind of the loser in every situation in the NBA, are the Knicks. No first round picks. You have a couple guys and then trade them away. You get into the second round, and even though I know they took a beloved Dookie of yours, I just don't understand the Knicks strategy here. I guess they're just gonna attempt to become a parts team and shed some salary, but there's nothing really exciting going on around the New York Knicks, especially after this draft. And not the, it is bad for the league because everyone, the Knicks are a huge market. They're the fashion apparel team, but you don't draft anyone in the first round, even if the draft is weaker than what we're used to, and then you just use your second round pick on a guy from Duke because I guess that's a named product. I don't even understand how he fits into the system here. So my winner, the Detroit Pistons. My loser, the New York Knicks. Both Eastern Conference teams, I know, but the Eastern Conference has a lot of moving parts in it, especially going forward. So those are my picks. So I'm interested to hear what yours would be.
Both your winner and loser were guys or teams that I was thinking about saying, but just for for purposes that I'm not completely echoing you, I'll go a different direction and also say that the Houston Rockets were another team that I went with as a winner because being able to get Jabari Smith at the 3 spot, a guy that a lot of people thought could have gone number 1 overall, and especially with how well he fits next, in my opinion, next to Jalen Green and Josh Christopher and help me on some of the other backcourts they got. I think they can make a big step next year, and especially with the progression of that Sagoon center they got, I think they can make a big step next year. And Smith's a heck of a player, so I think they have a good, like the Pistons, they are headed in a very good direction going forward. And loser, I'm going to go with a little bit of a narrative here, not necessarily that I don't like the pick, but because of what history has told us. And I'm going to say the loser is Keegan Murray, who was drafted by the Sacramento Kings, because we are all aware of it's not necessarily who the Kings have drafted, it's who's come immediately after the Kings draft picks.
Yep.
And that's, I think, and there's nothing against Keegan Murray. I liked Keegan Murray, and I thought as the season progressed, he should have been the Big Ten Player of the Year. However, I think Jaden Ivey could be special. I think the guy drafted before him, Jabari Smith, could be special. And the fact that if Keegan Murray does not play anything close to those two, he's just going to be another name of a complete debacle that the Kings have drafted.
Yep.
I mean, so he's got to be a loser for me. And it's nothing he did wrong. It's just the organization he went to and the reputation that they have.
That's exactly it, Les. And another thing I like about the Rockets, too, is one of their later picks, and Tari Eason out of LSU.
Love that pick.
A very Herb Jones-like defensive player who will fit in very well there to go along with a good young core. But Les, if I may change the subject for a minute here.
Absolutely.
I want you to put your thinking cap on because I know it's been a long time ago. But do you remember when we did that draft show about college basketball?
Yes.
Who did you take number 1 overall?
Yeah, take number 1 overall.
I looked it up on our archive, so I know the answer. So I'll help you out if you need it.
Who did I take number 1 overall? I think I took a big.
Yes, you took the most obvious big.
Oh, Chet?
No. You went Midwestern with this pick, and so did I.
Okay, remind me. Who did I pick?
You took Kofi Cockburn.
Okay, yeah.
And I took Travion Williams with my number 1 overall pick. And do you know where those guys got drafted?
They didn't.
They didn't, no. Which brings me to my big point is like, Les, this is one of those times where we've definitely, in my opinion, have seen like how the league has changed in like the players who got drafted and who didn't, because Kofi didn't get drafted. Travion Williams didn't get drafted. Brady Manick didn't get drafted. Alondes Williams, who was the player of the year in the ACC from Wake Forest, did not get drafted. Colin Gillespie from Villanova, championship pedigree, did not get drafted. Buddy
that doesn't
Boeheim,
surprise me. Does not
son
surprise
of a
me.
Hall of Fame coach, did not get drafted. But you want to know who I did see getting drafted? Oh, and Tyson Etienne was another one that surprised me. The great point guard from Wichita State.
Yeah.
Lofton Jr., Scottie Pippen Jr., Ron Harper Jr., all guys who did not get drafted. But you want to know, this shows me how the league is changing in a few ways, Les, because like I said, we are drafting more now on potential than ever. This is where like you take a chance on Jokic for Miami, or you draft Zhang if you're the Thunder to play small forward. You now are focused on getting guys you can either develop or guys you can stash away, so that way you have more roster flexibility, especially in the second round. Like the Pacers took Hugo Besson. I don't know who that is. I'm not gonna lie. I didn't
Hmm.
know his name until he went last pick in the draft, and I woke up and saw it the next day. So Les, this draft shows to me that like we are drafting now international guys and guys from the G League on full potential that we can stash away. We can stash them away, see what happens, and we don't have to pay them like we would if we would have drafted Kofi Cockburn. And it also shows me once again, Les, how positionless basketball has taken over the league because there's just no place for a guy like Kofi Cockburn in the NBA. There's really no place for a Travion Williams. Guys like Ron Harper Jr. and Scottie Pippen Jr., while good shooters, never really developed the niche or the kind of high velocity stuff that they need to get to that draft pick level. So, Les, this showed to me just how drastic the difference between the NBA and college basketball has become, and how now we are drafting guys based on salary needs, who we can acquire the rights to and not have to pay, and just drafting fully on potential. Because, like we've discussed, Shaden Sharp has not played in a full year of basketball and went number 7 overall. So I think that this is another draft that just shows how the face of the league is changing to being fully based on your athletic potential and being able to keep you flexible for the sake of the salary cap. So that was the point I harped on earlier, and then went back and made tried to flesh out a little bit more.
And you weren't going in this direction, but something you said is going to make me go in another direction as well to add on to your point. And it takes me back to a quote said by Kobe Bryant years ago about how international prospects are just so much more advanced than American prospects nowadays, just based on how much emphasis they put on technique. And we've seen it slowly coming into fruition as we see more and more international guys being amongst the NBA greats. But now with your statement of how, as the later we got in the draft, the more and more, the less and less of the college stars we went after and more of the international prospects. And like you said, it's starting to come into fruition. It just, as something that Kobe Bryant said, I think 10, 15 years ago, has only proves his point more and more every year.
I agree with you totally there, Les. And I mean, let's not forget too that these guys are those guys who like get signed to a basketball league when they're like 7 years old and then play against other grown men until they declare for the draft at 19. So it is pretty impressive. But Les, as our time runs out here, we have to go to the graveyard a little bit and talk about who do we think of this first round class has the potential to be the biggest bust. If you had to pick your guy who you're a little bit wary of, whether it be a high pick, whether it be a low pick, who is the one guy where you're kind of scratching your head a little bit?
I got two guys for you.
Okay.
So I'm gonna go with the first off, I'm gonna go with your beloved Pacers at the number 6 pick with Benedict Matheran. You know, I watched him all year at Arizona, heard about how he was this draft prospect, and a lot of NBA teams were drooling over him. And defensively, I can understand that. But there is nothing offensively that he does or that I could potentially see developing into anything more than just an okay role player that can defend. And don't get me wrong, his defense alone will keep him on a roster for years. But that's not a guy that I'm going to draft number 6 overall. And I understand, and you and I are on the same page about potential. But I look at his mechanics, his fundamentals, and I don't see anything that is going to develop him into anything more than just a high quality role player. And it doesn't help. And I respect the confidence like I often do, but it doesn't help the statement that he just made about LeBron as well, how LeBron's going to have to show him how great he is. Look, I respect your confidence, but LeBron's the best player ever. You're a rookie. He's LeBron James. You're an effing rookie, like that Yo Gotti song. So tone it down a little bit. And for my number 2 bust in the first that went in the first round is somebody that I thought had no business even potentially being drafted, let alone going in the first round, and that's Christian Braun, who went with the 21st pick. I liked him in college, not as a pro at all. And I think this is my comparison. He's a poor man's Grayson Allen without the tripping.
The tripping is all Grayson Allen knows.
I mean, that shooting threes and dunks. That's tripping, shooting threes and dunks is Grayson Allen.
Yep, that's all he does. And he says this is a Duke fan.
Yes. So anyways, who are your bust picks?
Les, you already hit on one, and one of them is Keegan Murray, just because I don't trust the Sacramento Kings organization to know what to do with a player. And especially when they have such a weird team already with Sabonis and De'Aaron Fox and all that stuff. That one, I just feel for the kid because I think he's going to be an okay pro. It's just no one will care about him. And if he even sinks below expectations a little bit, he's going to be all but forgotten. Another one that I wasn't as high on, but I understand is Johnny Davis from going to Washington.
I'll be honest, I like him.
I know you like him. It's just, I'd have, once again, that's another dumpster fire organization. They're a young team with an okay core, but if Bradley Beal stays, he's going to have to sit behind Bradley Beal for a bit. And I guess my problem is I don't trust a lot of Big Ten guys when they get into the league because I feel like they've already given their body such a beating in like the brutal, bloody Big Ten that like when they get to the NBA, I feel like they've already like added. It's like being a running back and getting drafted in the second round. You've already added so many miles to your body that it's like, how much more can you give before you crap out? And so I've got Keegan Murray, Johnny Davis, and another pick that kind of surprised me was just after your Christian Braun pick, which did surprise me, was Walker Kessler to the Grizzlies.
Yeah.
I was definitely caught off guard by that one. I mean, I feel like he won't be a bust per se because I don't feel like he has that kind of expectation. But he's going to be behind Steven Adams until Steven Adams retires. And that team is just on the rise right now. And it seemed like they could have gotten out and gotten Blake Wesley was on the board, Jovic was on the board, Patrick Baldwin was on the board, and instead they took like a giant center, which I mean which they already had too. They already have Steven Adams, and I don't know if he's a free agent if they can re-sign him or not, but he's not going to be super expensive to re-sign anyway. So I didn't get that one. When you could go out and get an athletic guy to pair with your already athletic core, especially Blake Wesley, who, being a Hoosier, I have seen play and love dearly, or even, as your friend said, Ty Washington, who is another guy. We've seen Kentucky guards who blossom the minute they get in the league. I would have taken that before I take a guy who, although he's a great defensive player, fulfills a need you already have.
Yeah.
Especially when you did have a chance to get somebody who can make a blow the game open play on the board in like Blake Wesley, Ty Washington, or David Roddy. So that one was another one that surprised me. But like I said, when you're picked 22nd overall, I don't know if you could technically be a bust, but I can't foresee like an all-star career for Walker Kessler.
Well, I don't even like Walker Kessler at all as a pro. I think he'll be out of the league in a couple of years. I didn't think he should have gotten Defensive Player of the Year in college basketball. I understand why he got it and the numbers he put up, but it was a lot of weak side blocks and not really so much man-to-man defense that really go out and, hey, guard this guy, shut him down. But as we approach about 4 minutes left before we have to get off the show, as we talked about the bust, I'm going to go ahead and give a couple steals that I predicted. And my first steal is Jayden Hardy, a guy that I watched in high school with a Bradley Beal type ceiling. He went 37th, picked by the Sacramento Kings and traded to Dallas. I'm not really sure why he slid in the draft, but talk about a guy that has all kinds of potential. And another guy that also slipped in the draft, a guy that we were talking about heading into the NBA draft a season ago was Patrick Baldwin. And ironically enough, as we talked about the Golden State Warriors, yes, they do this every time. They have not only have the current dynasty going, but they're drafting to set up for future success. And what better way than to draft a 6'10 version of a guy that they've already won 4 titles with Klay Thompson and Patrick Baldwin. So those are my 2 steals. Matt, who you got?
I almost put these guys as the team that won the draft, but because they both their 2 picks were so late, I couldn't, just because the ceiling is lower for these 2 guys. But the San Antonio Spurs picked Malachi Branham and Blake Wesley, and those are 2 guys who I have watched throughout the year. I really like the way they play. I really feel like those 2 combined with Murray, if he stays, could be really good players. They're very athletic. They play good defense. One of them is a better shooter than the other, and you can figure out which one. But I really like the draft the Spurs had. I think that Branham and Blake Wesley are 2 big steals. And like you said, I don't understand how the Warriors keep doing this crap, but it's really frustrating. So I'm going to go, the Warriors, I forgot the Grizzlies did pick Ty Washington later in that draft. Anyway, I'm
He's
going
a
to say my
Rocket.
steal. What? Oh, they traded him. That's right.
They traded him to the Rockets, yeah.
That's right. But I'm going to say my 2 steals are the 2 guys the Spurs drafted in the first round, in Blake Wesley and Malachi Branham. Those are my 2 steals. I really like those guys. Even if they have to come off the bench, they're going to be really good players.
That is all the time we have for today's podcast. As always, like and subscribe to the Less is More Sports YouTube channel and Spotify channel. Yeah, so new thing, Matt, that I think fans are starting to realize is that if they don't want to look at us, they don't have to. They can just listen to the audio on Spotify.
Please don't look at me. Do not perceive me. I don't know. That's probably the number one reason why no one watches us, is because I'm just staring at the camera like this every podcast going, you must believe in Blake Wesley. You must
think you're
believe
beautiful.
in him.
I think you're
What?
beautiful. You are
Thank you.
beautiful.
I'm beautiful. It's true. I'm beautiful.
I tell you you're beautiful. Your mother tells you you're beautiful. Those are the 2 people that you should trust the most.
I don't think my mom's ever told me I'm beautiful. She's called me handsome, but not beautiful.
There you go. See, it's the same thing. It means the
Okay.
same.
I'll
But
believe
anyways,
you this.
that is all the time we have for today. As always, tell us what you liked and what you didn't like in this comment section. Like and share the video for extra, if you liked what you heard. But until next time, Matt and I are out.
If you share, Les will kiss you. Goodbye.
Now, I don't know about all that.